The knee slammed into his spine before he could speak. Solomon Rivers hit the concrete face first, tasting blood. The handcuffs bit into his wrists. The crowd walked past. Nobody stopped. Nobody cared. Just another black man getting what he deserved. Then the badge fell from his pocket. 9 words stamped in federal steel, and the cop's face went white. The phones came out. The cameras started rolling, and 23 years of lies began to unravel in real time. Hit subscribe. Stay until the end. Comment your city. I want to see how far truth can travel when someone finally stands up. Now, let's go back to where it started. Hands on the wall, boy, or I put you down right here. Solomon's coffee cup shattered on the pavement. The hand on his shoulder spun him so hard, something cracked in his neck. Officer, I'm not... Shut your mouth. Dwight Rooker had his weapon halfway out of the holster. Hands, wall, now. Solomon raised his hands. 42 years old federal judge, decorated veteran, reduced to this palms against brick legs, spread morning coffee soaking into his shoes. Dispatch 1035 at Franklin and 3rd. Suspicious person. Rooker's voice was concrete. Possible vagrancy, possible narcotics. I'm standing on a sidewalk. You're loitering. The cafe doesn't open for an hour. Rooker's hand tightened on his weapon. You a lawyer? No, sir. Then shut up. Davis, check him. The second officer approached younger, uncertain. Marcus Davis, 6 months on the job, first morning with Rooker. His hands shook as he patted down Solomon's coat. Clean, no weapons. Check his pockets. Rooker, maybe we should... Check his pockets. The words came out like bullets. Davis pulled out a dollar bill torn newspaper lint. Then his fingers touched the inside breast pocket. Something metallic. There's something. Don't touch that, Solomon said. Rooker grabbed it from Davis's hand, flipped open the leather case. 3 seconds of absolute silence. The badge inside caught the morning light. United States Supreme Court, active clearance, S.J. Rivers. What the hell is this? I tried to tell you, Solomon said. Fake ID. You think this is funny? Rooker slammed Solomon harder against the wall. You're under arrest for fraudulent federal documents, resisting arrest. I'm not resisting anything. Disorderly conduct. Davis, cuff him. Davis stood frozen. Sir, maybe we should verify. Cuff him, or I write you up for insubordination. Davis pulled out his handcuffs. His fingers trembled. Sir, I need you to put your hands behind your back. Solomon didn't move. One phone call. Washington. 5 minutes. We don't take orders from you. Rooker grabbed Solomon's left arm and yanked. The shoulder joint popped. Solomon's breath hissed, but he didn't scream. Rooker, stop. Get his other arm. Together, they forced both hands back. The cuffs clicked shut. Too tight. Drawing blood. A phone camera clicked across the street. Ma'am, put that away. Rooker's head snapped up. Public street. I can record whatever I want. The woman in the business suit raised her phone higher. Badge number. Now. This is police business. The whole world's watching. Whatever you do next, they'll see it. More phones appeared. Delivery driver. 2 teenagers. Elderly couple. Within 30 seconds, 5 cameras recording. Fine. Record this. Rooker's voice rose. We're arresting a vagrant carrying fake federal documents who resisted arrest. I didn't resist, Solomon said louder now. That badge is real. My name is Solomon Joseph Rivers, Federal Judge, Northern District. That clearance was issued for Supreme Court consultation. Call the Office of Federal Judicial Security. Save it for booking. Rooker pulled him toward the patrol car. Let's go. Davis opened the back door. Watch your head. His voice was soft. Their eyes met. You know it's real, Solomon said quietly. You saw it. Davis looked away and shut the door. Inside the car, Rooker tossed the badge case on the dashboard like trash. Federal judge, right, and I'm the president. Should we run his name? Davis asked. I'll run it at the station, after booking. 11 minutes to the precinct. Solomon in silence, watching the city through bulletproof glass. Thinking about choices, about consequences, about the 12-year-old boy whose death had started everything. At the station, Custody Sergeant Palmer looked up from his paperwork. What have we got? Vagrant fake documents resisting. Palmer squinted at Solomon. He doesn't look combative. They never do until they fight. Did he fight? Rooker dropped the badge case on Palmer's desk. He was carrying this. Claims he's Supreme Court. Palmer whistled. Good fake. It's not fake, Solomon said. His voice was tired now. Call the number. They'll confirm everything. We'll verify in processing. Empty your pockets. Palmer gestured to a plastic bin. Shoelaces, belt. Solomon had neither. His shoes held together with duct tape. They led him down a corridor past 3 cells and locked him in the 4th. The door clanged shut. Solomon sat on the metal bench and closed his eyes. Hey. Voice from the next cell. Young Latino man, maybe 25. You okay? Fine. You don't look fine. What'd they get you for? Existing, Solomon said. The man laughed, but it wasn't happy. Yeah, I know that charge. Got it for driving while brown. You, standing while black. In a nice neighborhood. In any neighborhood. Silence for a moment. The big cop Rooker, the man said. He's got a reputation. 3 guys I know got hospitalized after he apprehended them. Nobody filed complaints. Why not? You really asking, you think the system listens to people like us? Solomon didn't answer. They both knew. 2 hours passed. Through the window, sun climbing higher. Solomon had been walking since 4 a.m. Walking helped him think. Helped him forget. Helped him pretend he still had somewhere to go. Footsteps. Officer Davis appeared alone holding a clipboard. He unlocked the cell but didn't open it. I ran your name. Solomon looked up. And, you're real. Davis's voice barely a whisper. Solomon Joseph Rivers, federal judge, appointed 2019, landmark ruling, national headlines. Then, he paused. Then you disappeared, 8 months ago. Not disappeared, removed. Why? Does it matter? Are you letting me go? Rooker says we're charging you anyway. Says the badge could be stolen that you might have, that he can't admit he was wrong. Solomon stood slowly. I've known men like Rooker my whole life. They'd burn the world down before saying sorry. He's my training officer. If I go against him, you'll have to explain to your children why you watched an innocent man get destroyed because a cop couldn't handle being wrong. Solomon's voice was soft but steel. That's the choice. Not easy, but simple. Davis looked at his clipboard. There's something else. I pulled your full record. The case that made you famous 12-year-old boy shot by police. You ruled in favor of the family, demanded federal investigation. He paused. That ruling cost you everything. It cost me my career. Gave his mother a chance at justice. Rooker was on that case. Davis said it suddenly like ripping off a bandage. He was one of the investigating officers. The air went cold. Solomon's hands tightened on the bars. What? Officer Dwight Rooker, part of the investigation team. His report said the shooting was justified. Said the boy made threatening gestures. Davis checked his notes. Your ruling called that report questionable. Said there was evidence of suppressed witness testimony. Solomon's breath came slower now. Controlled. When did Rooker transfer to South Bend? 9 months ago, from Indianapolis Metro. Right after I left the bench. Solomon laughed bitter. He followed me. That's why would he? Because I destroyed his career first, after my ruling 3 officers were suspended. Rooker was one of them. 2 years under federal review. They couldn't prove he falsified anything because evidence disappeared. But everyone knew. He couldn't get promoted, couldn't transfer. His name was Mud. Solomon paused. So when I fell, he saw his chance. Davis stood very still. This morning wasn't random. No. He knew who you were. Yes. And arrested you anyway, in front of cameras. Davis's voice rising. He's that stupid. That angry, Solomon corrected. Men like Rooker don't think about consequences when they see revenge. They just act. Heavy footsteps in the corridor. Davis straightened, shoving the clipboard under his arm. I shouldn't have told you. But you did. That means something. Rooker appeared. Davis, what the hell are you doing? Finishing intake report, sir. Leave it. We got a situation. What situation? Rooker's face was red veins bulging. A dozen news vans outside and some federal prosecutor demanding we release our prisoner or she's filing charges against the entire department. Davis's eyes went wide. How? Those goddamn phones. Rooker slammed his palm against the wall. Somebody posted the arrest online. 50,000 views. Calling it police brutality. Calling us racist. Deputy Chief is losing his mind. Solomon said nothing. Just recognition in his eyes. Truth always finds its way. What do we do? Davis asked. We stick to our story. He was resisting. Badge is fake. We had probable cause. Rooker pointed at Davis. You're backing me up. Every word. Understand? Davis looked at Solomon, then Rooker. Sir, I think... I'm not asking what you think. I'm telling you what you'll say. Rooker stepped closer, voice dangerous. Your career is 6 months old. Mine is 23 years. When they ask questions, they'll believe me. Not you, not him, me. So you'll say what I tell you to say, or you'll wash out before lunch. Clear. Silence stretched. We. Clear. Davis's jaw worked. Clear, sir. Good. Get him ready for transfer. Feds want him at Federal Building by noon. Rooker walked away. When the footsteps faded, Davis stood frozen. Solomon watched through the bars, saw the war on the young officer's face. It's okay, Solomon said gently. I don't blame you. You should. Davis's voice cracked. I'm just going to let them destroy you to protect themselves. You'll do what you have to. Everyone does. That's not good enough. It's human. Solomon sat back down. Go on, I'll be fine. Davis didn't move. When I joined the force, my father told me the badge doesn't make you a good cop. Your choices do. Every day you decide what kind of officer you want to be, hero or coward. No in between. Smart man. He's dead. Killed in the line of duty when I was 15. Shot 3 times protecting a black family from home invasion. Stayed on his feet long enough to get them to safety. They gave him a medal. Full honors funeral. Davis's hands shook. I stood at his grave and promised I'd be the kind of cop he was proud of. Solomon stood and approached the bars. Then be that cop. If I go against Rooker, you'll sleep at night. 20 years from now, when your children ask what kind of man you were, you'll have an answer that doesn't make you sick? Davis met his eyes. Long moment. Neither spoke. Then Davis pulled out his keys. I'm unlocking this door. I'm walking you out the front entrance past every camera and reporter. And I'm telling them exactly what happened. Every detail. Every lie. His hand was steady now, turning the key. If that costs me my badge, I never deserved it. The door swung open. Solomon stepped into the corridor. Free. They'll come after you. Let them. Rooker will make sure you never work law enforcement again. Then I'll find something else. Something that lets me look in the mirror. Davis gestured down the hall. Come on. Let's tell the truth before somebody buries it. They walked together through the station, past officers who stared but didn't intervene, past the custody desk where Palmer watched with wide eyes, past the administrative wing where the deputy chief's voice shouted behind closed doors. At the front entrance, Davis paused. Once we walk through here, no going back. There never was, Solomon said. Davis pushed open the door. Outside was chaos. News vans, reporters jostling behind barricades. A crowd of 200 signs raised "Justice for Judge Rivers" and "Badge or no badge, Black Lives Matter." Standing at the center, arms crossed, eyes blazing, Assistant U.S. Attorney Patricia Marshall, Solomon's former colleague, oldest friend. "About damn time," Patricia called. Then her eyes went to Davis, and her expression shifted. "Officer, step away from Judge Rivers." "No," Solomon said quickly. "He's with me." Patricia's eyebrows rose. "Solomon?" "Officer Davis just risked his career to do the right thing. Whatever happens, he's under my protection." Cameras swiveled. Davis froze, suddenly aware he'd stepped into a spotlight that would define his life. A reporter shoved a microphone forward. "Judge Rivers, were you assaulted this morning?" Another voice. "Why were you dressed like a homeless man?" Third. "Are you filing charges?" Solomon raised his hand. Crowd quieted. His voice carried with courtroom authority. "My name is Solomon Joseph Rivers. This morning I was illegally detained, searched, and arrested on a public sidewalk. I was assaulted, held without cause. When I identified myself as a federal judge, I was told my credentials were fake and I was resisting arrest." He paused. "I was targeted because I'm black, because I wore old clothes, because I looked like someone the system believes doesn't matter. This isn't new. This isn't unique. This is America. For millions without a federal badge, this is just Tuesday." The crowd erupted. Anger, agreement, tears. Solomon held up his hand. But today was different. Today, there were cameras, witnesses. Today there was Officer Marcus Davis who had to choose between protecting a corrupt system and protecting truth. He chose truth. That's hope. That's why I'm standing here instead of in a cell. One person decided doing right mattered more than keeping his job. He turned to Davis, whose face had gone pale, but eyes were clear. "Officer Davis, thank you for your courage." Cameras caught it all. The handshake. The moment between two strangers, now bound by a choice neither could take back. Patricia stepped forward, placing herself between Solomon and the press. "That's all. Judge Rivers will make a formal statement after federal consultation. The U.S. Attorney's Office is launching a full investigation into this morning and into the conduct of officers involved." "What about Officer Rooker?" a reporter shouted. "Charges." Patricia's smile was sharp. "That depends on what we find. But every arrest Rooker made in 5 years is under review. Every report, every case. Because when an officer abuses power, once it's never just once. It's a pattern. Patterns leave trails." Solomon felt exhaustion hit. 4 hours in a cell shouldn't drain him this much. But it wasn't the cell. It was 8 months on streets. 8 months hiding. 8 months trying to disappear from a system that had chewed him up. But he wasn't hidden anymore. The video would spread. Story would grow. Rooker's past would crawl out of whatever hole it had been buried in. Solomon thought about the 12-year-old boy whose death started this. About his mother sitting in Solomon's courtroom, tears streaming, begging someone to believe her son hadn't deserved to die. About the moment Solomon issued his ruling, knowing it would cost everything but unable to do anything else. Justice isn't clean, it's messy and painful, and sometimes it destroys the people who fight for it. But it's worth fighting for. "Solomon." Patricia touched his arm. "We should go. Car's waiting." He nodded. Davis started to step back, fade into background, but Solomon caught his arm. "Where are you going?" "Back inside. Still have to file my report." "File it with us. Patricia Officer Davis needs legal representation. Your office can arrange that. Patricia studied Davis, then nodded. Done. Officer, you just became key witness in a federal civil rights investigation. Welcome to the right side of history. It's going to be rough. Davis swallowed hard. I'm ready. They climbed into Patricia's sedan, leaving Franklin Avenue chaos behind. Solomon looked back at the crowd cameras, the street where his life had changed for the second time in 8 months. They're coming after us hard, Patricia said. Rooker has friends. Union will back him. This gets ugly. Already ugly, Solomon said. We're just pulling back the curtain. She glanced at him in the mirror. 8 months on streets, and you didn't call once. Why? I was ashamed. Of what? How far I'd fallen. What they'd made me into. He looked at his torn coat-taped shoes. This wasn't how it was supposed to end. This isn't the end, Patricia said firmly. This is a new chapter. This time we write it together. Davis sat quietly processing. Finally, Judge Rivers, can I ask something? Solomon. Solomon. When you were in that cell, you knew I'd look up your record. Knew once I saw the truth about Rooker, I'd have to choose. You manipulated me. Solomon smiled slightly. I gave you information and trusted you to be decent. That's not manipulation. That's faith. But what if I chose wrong? Then I'd spend another night in jail and tomorrow would be harder. But eventually truth would come out. It always does. Question is how many people get hurt first. Solomon met his eyes. You saved us some pain, Marcus. That matters. They drove in silence. Somewhere, Rooker was probably in the deputy chief's office spinning his story, building his defense. Somewhere the union was preparing statements about proper procedure. Somewhere lawyers were sharpening knives. But right now, Solomon Rivers was free. And the badge that slipped from his pocket onto Franklin Avenue had started something that couldn't be stopped. A reckoning was coming. For Rooker, for the department, for everyone who thought they could bury truth and walk away clean. Solomon closed his eyes and for the first time in months let himself hope that maybe justice wasn't dead, just waiting for someone brave enough to pick it up. Patricia's phone started ringing before they'd gone 3 blocks. She glanced at the screen and her jaw tightened. It's the U.S. Attorney. This should be fun. She answered on speaker. Marshall. Patricia, what in God's name is happening in South Bend? The voice belonged to U.S. Attorney General Michael Hartwell, and he sounded like a man watching his career catch fire. I've got the mayor on one line, the police union on another, and CNN calling every 30 seconds asking if we're charging an entire police department with civil rights violations. We're charging whoever the evidence says we should charge, Patricia said. Sir, this is Solomon Rivers. You remember him? Silence on the other end. Then, Judge Rivers is alive. Solomon leaned forward. Hello, Michael. Jesus Christ. Hartwell's voice dropped. Solomon, we all thought everyone said you'd where the hell have you been? On the streets, sleeping in shelters, eating at soup kitchens, living the American dream. That's not funny. It wasn't meant to be. Solomon's voice was flat. 8 months ago, I was pressured to resign from the bench for conduct unbecoming. 3 senators, 2 DOJ officials, and a personal visit from the Attorney General himself. They gave me a choice: resign quietly or face formal ethics charges that would destroy what was left of my reputation. I resigned. Lost my pension, my security clearance, my home. Everything. Within 2 weeks, I was on the street. Hartwell said nothing for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different. Careful. Solomon, those ethics charges were legitimate. You made statements to the press about an ongoing federal investigation. You violated. I told the truth about a dead child and the officers who killed him. If that's a violation, then the system is more broken than I thought. The system has rules. The system has preferences. Solomon corrected. And 12-year-old black boys aren't among them. In the back seat, Davis sat very still, listening to two federal officials argue about the machinery that had ground Solomon into dust. Patricia cut in. "Sir, with respect, we're not relitigating Judge Rivers' resignation. We're investigating what happened this morning. An illegal arrest assault by a police officer and possible civil rights violations. That's our focus. And you think you can prove that? We have video from 5 witnesses. We have Officer Davis's testimony. We have Rooker's arrest record, which I'm betting shows a pattern. And we have the fact that Rooker was personally involved in the case that destroyed Solomon's career. That's not coincidence. That's revenge." Hartwell was quiet. Then, "How bad is the video?" "Bad enough that it's already got 200,000 views and climbing. Bad enough that 3 civil rights organizations have called in the last hour offering legal support. Bad enough that if we don't move fast, South Bend is going to burn." "Don't be dramatic." "I'm not. Sir, turn on the news. Any channel. They're all running it." Through the phone they could hear Hartwell switching on a television. Voices emerged sharp and urgent. Shocking footage showing what appears to be a federal judge being violently arrested by South Bend police. Questions about whether this was racially motivated. The officer involved, Dwight Rooker, has a history of... Hartwell turned it off. "Christ. All right, you've got 48 hours to build a case. I want everything documented, every witness interviewed, every frame of video analyzed. And Patricia..." "Sir, if this goes sideways, it's your career on the line, not mine. Understand?" Patricia's smile was cold. "Crystal clear, sir?" She hung up. "He's going to throw you under the bus the first chance he gets," Solomon said quietly. "Let him try. I've been building cases for 15 years. I don't lose." She glanced at him in the mirror. "Besides, I owe you. You taught me everything I know about fighting dirty." "I taught you to fight clean. The system taught you dirty. Same difference." They pulled into the parking garage of the federal building. As they climbed out, Patricia turned to Davis. "Officer, I'm going to have one of our attorneys sit with you while you give your statement. Everything you say is protected. Rooker can't touch you here." "He doesn't need to touch me here," Davis said. "He just needs to wait until I go back to the precinct." "You're not going back." "I have to. I'm still a cop. I still have duties." "You're a witness in a federal investigation." Patricia cut him off. "As of right now, you're on administrative leave pending review. That's not a punishment. That's protection, trust me." Davis looked at Solomon. "Is she always this intense?" "Always," Solomon said. "It's why she's the best." Inside, they were met by 3 junior attorneys, all carrying tablets and looking stressed. One of them, a young woman named Chen, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we've got a situation. The police union just released a statement saying Judge Rivers' arrest was justified and that Officer Rooker followed proper procedure. They're claiming the badge was never verified and that Rivers was combative." "Combative?" Patricia's voice could have cut steel. "He was handcuffed in under 30 seconds. Where's the combative part?" "They're saying he made threatening statements." "Like what?" Chen checked her tablet. "The suspect made verbal threats toward Officer Rooker and refused to comply with lawful orders. That's their exact wording." Solomon laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Verbal threats, right. I asked them to verify my identity. That's the threat." "It's enough for them to spin the narrative," Patricia said. "They're getting ahead of the story, making you the aggressor before we can establish you as the victim." "I'm not a victim." "In the eyes of the law, you are, and we need to use that." Solomon shook his head. "I didn't survive 8 months on the street to play victim for your case. I want the truth out there, all of it. My arrest Rooker's past the Melek Terrence case, everything. If we go public with everything right now, we lose control of the narrative. The union will bury us in counterclaims and... Patricia." Solomon's voice was quiet but firm. "I'm not asking for your permission. I'm telling you what's going to happen. I'm holding a press conference. Today. And I'm telling the truth about Rooker, about Malik, about why I was forced off the bench. All of it. Solomon, that's suicide. The moment you start talking about the Terrence case, they'll bring up your resignation. They'll question your mental state. They'll say you're bitter, unstable, making false accusations against a decorated officer. Let them say it. I'm done hiding. He turned to face her fully. 8 months ago, I let them silence me because I thought it would protect what little dignity I had left. I was wrong. There's no dignity in silence when children are dying and the people who kill them get promotions. So I'm speaking. You can help me or you can get out of my way. Patricia stared at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. There's the Solomon I remember. Stubborn as hell and twice as mean when he's right. So you'll help. I'll do better than help. I'll make sure every major network is there. She turned to Chen. Get on the phone. CNN, MSNBC, Fox, all the locals. Press conference at 4 p.m. Federal building steps. Tell them Judge Solomon Rivers is making a statement about police corruption and the death of Malik Terrence. That'll get their attention. Chen hesitated. Ma'am, if the U.S. attorney finds out, he will, in about 3 hours when it's too late to stop it. Now move. Chen hurried off. The other attorneys followed, already making calls. Davis, who'd been silent through all this, finally spoke. Judge Rivers Solomon, if you bring up the Terrence case publicly, Rooker's not going to just defend himself. He's going to come after you with everything he's got. His lawyers, the union, maybe even criminal charges if they can manufacture something. You understand that? I do. And you're doing it anyway. I am. Why? Solomon turned to look at the young officer. Really look at him. How old was your father when he died? 42. Same age I am now. Same age Malik Terrence's father was when his son was killed. You know what the difference is between your father and Malik's father? Davis shook his head. Your father died a hero, full honors, medal, flag on his coffin, his name on a memorial wall. Malik's father got a bill for his son's autopsy and a police report that called his 12-year-old child a threat. Solomon's voice was steady, but his eyes burned. That's the difference. Your father's death meant something because the system decided it did. Malik's death meant nothing because the system decided he didn't matter. I'm doing this because somebody needs to stand up and say that's wrong, that every death matters, that every child deserves justice, even the black ones. Davis's eyes were wet. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be better. That's all any of us can do. Patricia checked her watch. We've got 2 hours until the press conference. Solomon, you need to clean up, get some food. You look like you've been sleeping in a dumpster. I have been sleeping in a dumpster. Sometimes. Well, stop. At least for today. We need you looking like a federal judge, not a vagrant. It's about optics. I thought this was about truth. It's about both. Come on. She led him through the federal building to a private office on the 7th floor. Someone had already laid out fresh clothes, a suit shirt, tie shoes, all in his size. Solomon stared at them. How did you... I've been tracking you for 3 months, Patricia admitted. Ever since I heard you'd resigned, I knew something was wrong. Nobody throws away a career like yours without a reason. So I looked into it, found out about the pressure campaign, the threats, the way they systematically destroyed you for doing your job. She paused. I also found out where you were sleeping. St. Vincent's Shelter on Tuesdays, the Mission on Lafayette on Thursdays, the overpass near the river when the shelters were full. I had someone watching to make sure you were okay. Solomon's voice went quiet. You knew. This whole time you knew where I was. Yes. And you didn't help. Didn't reach out. I wanted to, every day. But I knew if I contacted you while you were vulnerable, while you were at your lowest, it would look like manipulation. Like I was using your situation to recruit you for some case. I needed you to come back on your own terms, as your own man, not as my witness. She met his eyes. I'm sorry. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I should have—" "You were right," Solomon said. "If you'd pulled me off the street 3 months ago, I'd have been too angry, too broken to fight. I needed those months, needed to hit bottom, because now I know exactly what I'm fighting for." He picked up the suit. It was expensive, well made, the kind of suit federal judges wore when they wanted to be taken seriously. "Give me 10 minutes. Patricia nodded and left him alone. Solomon showered in the private bathroom, watching 8 months of street grime wash down the drain. The hot water hurt at first, too intense after months of cold sponge baths in shelter bathrooms. But he stood under it until his skin turned red and his muscles loosened. In the mirror, he barely recognized himself. Thinner, harder, lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. But something else, too. Something in his gaze that was clearer now, more certain. He dressed slowly, feeling the weight of real clothes again. The shirt was crisp. The suit fit perfectly. The shoes were uncomfortable after months in torn sneakers, but he'd adjust. When he emerged, Patricia was waiting with a cup of coffee and a sandwich. "Eat. You're no good to me if you pass out on camera." He ate mechanically, not tasting anything, just fueling his body for what came next. Davis appeared in the doorway. "They're setting up outside. There's already a crowd. Must be 300 people." 300? Patricia raised an eyebrow. "How?" "Social media. The arrest video's gone viral. Everyone's calling it the badge drop arrest. It's trending #1 on Twitter." Davis held up his phone, showing the screen. "People are angry, really angry." Solomon looked at the screen. Video after video of his arrest. Comments by the thousands. Some supportive, some calling him a fraud, some calling for Rooker's badge, some defending him. One comment stopped him cold. "My son was killed by cops too. Nobody cared. Thank you for fighting Judge Rivers." He handed the phone back. "Let's go." They took the elevator down to the first floor. Through the glass doors, Solomon could see the crowd gathering. News trucks, cameras, reporters, and civilians, hundreds of them, most black or brown, many holding signs. Patricia put a hand on his arm. "Once you walk out there, everything changes. You sure you're ready?" "I've been ready for 8 months. I just didn't know it yet." She nodded. "Then let's go make some history." They pushed through the doors together. The noise hit like a physical wall, cameras clicking, reporters shouting questions. The crowd cheering and chanting. "Justice for Rivers! Justice for Malik! No more killer cops!" Patricia stepped to the microphone stand someone had set up. She raised her hand, and the crowd quieted. "Thank you all for coming. My name is Patricia Marshall, Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Indiana. Today I'm here with Judge Solomon Rivers, who was unlawfully arrested this morning by officers of the South Bend Police Department. Judge Rivers will make a statement, after which I'll answer questions about the federal investigation we're launching. Judge Rivers." Solomon stepped to the microphone. For a moment, he just stood there looking at the cameras, at the crowd, at the faces of people who'd come because they understood what this moment meant. Then he spoke. "My name is Solomon Joseph Rivers. This morning I was arrested for the crime of being black in America." The crowd erupted, but he kept talking. "I was standing on a sidewalk harming no one when Officer Dwight Rooker of the South Bend Police Department decided I looked suspicious. He didn't ask my name, didn't ask what I was doing. He just put his hands on me, slammed me against a wall, and arrested me. When I produced my federal credentials, he called them fake. When I asked him to verify my identity, he called it resisting arrest. When I did nothing wrong, he made up crimes to justify his actions." He paused, letting that sink in. "But this isn't about me. This is about every black man who's been stopped, searched, arrested, or killed for no reason other than existing in the wrong neighborhood at the wrong time. This is about Malik Terrence, a 12-year-old child who was shot and killed by police during a traffic stop 3 years ago. Malik was in the back seat of his mother's car. He had a phone in his hand. Officers said he made a threatening gesture. The investigation concluded the shooting was justified. That investigation was led by Officer Dwight Rooker. Cameras flashed faster now. Reporters were typing furiously. 2 years ago, as a federal judge, I reviewed the Terrence case. I found evidence that suggested witness testimony had been suppressed, that the official report didn't match statements given at the scene, that Malik Terrence was killed not because he was a threat, but because he was black and an officer was scared. I ruled in favor of the Terrence family and ordered a federal investigation into the officers involved. He looked directly into the nearest camera. 6 months later, I was pressured to resign from the bench. 3 senators, 2 DOJ officials, and the Attorney General told me my ruling was inappropriate, that I'd overstepped, that I'd damaged the reputation of law enforcement. They gave me a choice: resign quietly or face ethics charges that would destroy me. I chose to resign. I thought it would protect what little I had left. I was wrong. His voice grew stronger. I spent 8 months homeless, sleeping in shelters, eating at soup kitchens, walking the streets at 4 in the morning because I had nowhere else to go. And this morning, the same officer whose report I challenged, whose career I damaged by telling the truth about Malik Terrence, arrested me on a public street and tried to destroy me all over again. The crowd was silent now, hanging on every word. So I want to ask you all something. I want to ask America something. He leaned closer to the microphone. What if I'm real? What if every word I just said is true? What if Malik Terrence was murdered and the system covered it up? What if officers like Rooker are still out there, still making arrests, still carrying badges, still deciding who lives and who dies based on the color of their skin? What if the system that destroyed my career is the same system that kills children and calls it justice? He straightened up. What if I'm real? And if I am, what are you going to do about it? He stepped back from the microphone. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then the crowd exploded, cheering, crying, chanting his name. Patricia stepped forward to field questions, but Solomon wasn't listening anymore. He was watching the cameras, watching his words being broadcast live to the nation, watching the truth finally being spoken out loud where everyone could hear it. A reporter pushed to the front. Judge Rivers, the police union says you're making false accusations. They say Officer Rooker's record is spotless. Solomon stepped back to the mic. Then let them release his full personnel file, every complaint, every use of force report, every lawsuit. Let's see how spotless it really is. Another reporter. Are you saying the federal government forced you to resign illegally? I'm saying I was given a choice between my career and my integrity. I chose integrity. Whether that was illegal is for the courts to decide. What do you want to happen to Officer Rooker? Solomon paused. Then, I want the truth. I want every case he's touched reviewed, every arrest examined, every report questioned. And if the evidence shows he's been abusing his power for years, I want him prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Not because I'm bitter, not because I want revenge, but because that's what justice looks like. Real justice, not the selective kind. Patricia pulled him back gently. That's all for now. Thank you. They retreated into the federal building as the crowd continued chanting. Inside, Solomon's legs nearly gave out. Patricia caught his arm. Easy. You did good. I just painted a target on my back. You painted a target on all of us, she corrected. But that's fine. Let them shoot. We'll shoot back. Davis was staring at his phone. Solomon, you need to see this. He held up the screen. The press conference was already being shared everywhere, but mixed in with the supportive comments were others, uglier ones. This judge is a liar and a criminal. Rooker did his job. Rivers is just mad he got caught. Another race baiter trying to destroy good cops. He deserves everything he got and more. And then at the bottom, one comment that made Solomon's blood run cold. Judge Rivers better watch his back. Accidents happen. Patricia saw it too. Her face went hard. That's a threat. Chen, I want FBI protection on Solomon immediately, full detail, and I want that commenter tracked down and charged." "I don't need protection," Solomon said. "You don't get a choice. You just called out a decorated police officer on national television and accused him of murder. You're officially a target." As if on cue, Patricia's phone rang. She looked at the screen and cursed. "It's Hartwell. This should be fun." She answered. "Sir." The yelling started immediately, loud enough that Solomon could hear it from 3 feet away. "Explicitly told you to wait. Unauthorized press conference. Career suicide." Patricia held the phone away from her ear until the yelling stopped. Then she spoke calmly. "Sir, are you finished?" "You're fired, Marshal. Effective immediately. Clear out your—" "No, sir, I'm not." Her voice was ice. "Because if you fire me, I'll hold my own press conference explaining how the U.S. Attorney's Office tried to suppress evidence and silence a witness in a federal civil rights case. I'll detail every conversation we've had, every order you gave me to slow walk this investigation, every time you prioritized politics over justice. And when I'm done, your career won't just be over. You'll be lucky if you're not indicted." Silence on the other end. "That's what I thought," Patricia said. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to support this investigation publicly. You're going to commit whatever resources I need, and you're going to stay out of my way while I build the case. In return, I won't burn your career to the ground. Do we have an understanding?" More silence. Then, quietly, "You've got 72 hours, Marshal. After that, I'm pulling the plug." "I'll only need 48. She hung up. Solomon stared at her. "You just threatened the U.S. Attorney." "I just saved this investigation. There's a difference." She turned to Chen. "Get me everything on Rooker. Every arrest, every complaint, every use of force report going back 15 years. I want bank records, phone records, emails. Everything. And I want Malik Terrence's complete case file. Original witness statements, not the official report. Find out who was suppressed and why." Chen nodded and hurried off. Patricia turned back to Solomon. "You started something today. Something big and messy and dangerous. People are going to fight back hard. The union, the department, maybe even the DOJ. You ready for that?" "I've been ready since Malik Terrence died and nobody cared." Solomon's voice was steady. "This isn't about me anymore. It's about everyone who comes after. Every black kid who deserves to grow up. Every officer who wants to do the right thing but is scared of the system. Every person who's been told their life doesn't matter. I'm fighting for them. And I don't stop until we win or I'm dead." Patricia smiled. "Good. Because neither do I." Outside, the crowd was still chanting. Inside the machinery of justice, real justice was finally starting to turn. And somewhere in South Bend, Officer Dwight Rooker was realizing that the man he'd arrested that morning wasn't just a judge. He was the match that would burn the whole system down. Rooker's lawyer called 20 minutes after the press conference ended. Patricia put it on speaker so everyone could hear. "Ms. Marshall, this is Gerald Hoffman, representing Officer Dwight Rooker. I'm calling to inform you that my client will be filing a defamation lawsuit against Judge Rivers and your office within the hour. The statements made today were reckless false, and—" "Save it for the judge." Patricia cut him off. "We stand by every word. You stand by calling my client a murderer on national television. I stand by saying he led an investigation that covered up the killing of a 12-year-old child. If that makes him uncomfortable, maybe he should have done his job properly the first time." Hoffman's voice went cold. "You're playing a dangerous game, Ms. Marshall. My client has an exemplary record spanning 23 years. He's received commendations, community service awards, and the respect of his peers. What does Judge Rivers have? A resignation under ethical review and 8 months living like a vagrant. Who do you think the jury's going to believe?" Solomon leaned toward the phone. "Tell Rooker I remember the witness." Silence on the other end. Then, "What witness?" "The woman who lived across from where Malik was killed. Mrs. Geneva Patterson. She gave a statement the night it happened. Said she saw everything from her window. Said Malik never moved, never raised his hands, never did anything threatening. Her statement was in the initial report. Then it disappeared from the final investigation file. Tell Rooker I know where she is, and I know why he buried her testimony. More silence. When Hoffman spoke again, his voice had lost some of its certainty. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. Everyone does. They just pretended not to because it was easier. Solomon's voice was steady, relentless. But I'm done pretending. So tell your client that Mrs. Patterson is going to testify. And when she does, his exemplary record won't mean a damn thing. The line went dead. Davis stared at Solomon. Is that true? Is there really a witness? There was. Whether she's still alive, whether she'll talk, whether she remembers, that's what we need to find out. Solomon turned to Patricia. Can you find her? Already on it. Patricia was typing furiously on her tablet. Chen, I need a locate on Geneva Patterson, last known address, South Bend, age approximately 60 to 70. Pull everything: DMV records, utility bills, tax returns, Social Security. Find her. Chen nodded and disappeared. Solomon walked to the window, looking out at the crowd that was still gathered below. Some had started lighting candles. Others were holding vigil. A few were crying. He saw a woman holding a photo of a young boy, maybe 13 or 14. Her sign read, "My son too." His name was Deshaun. They're all Malik, Solomon said quietly. Every one of them. Every mother down there has buried a child or knows someone who has. That's why they came. Not for me. For the sons they'll never see, graduate, never see, get married, never see become men. Patricia joined him at the window. That woman with Deshaun's picture. That's Shanice Williams. Her son was killed 2 years ago during a traffic stop. Officer said he reached for something. Turned out to be a cell phone. No charges filed, no investigation. Case closed in 48 hours. Who was the investigating officer? Patricia met his eyes. Dwight Rooker. Solomon's hands curled into fists. How many what? How many cases has Rooker investigated where a black person died and the officer walked away clean? How many bodies has he buried with paperwork? I don't know yet, but we're going to find out. She checked her watch. It's 5 p.m. We've got 47 hours before Hartwell pulls the plug. We need to move fast. Davis spoke up. I can help. I know people in the department. Good cops who hate what Rooker represents but are too scared to speak up. If I reach out, tell them it's safe to talk. It's not safe, Patricia interrupted. The second you contact anyone in that department, Rooker's going to know. He'll shut them down, threaten their careers, maybe worse. You can't go back there. Then what do I do? Sit here while you fight my fight. This isn't your fight, Marcus, Solomon said. Not yet. Right now, you're a witness. A good cop who did the right thing. That's valuable. That's rare. Don't throw it away trying to be a hero. You're being a hero. I'm being a man who has nothing left to lose. You still have a career, a future. Don't sacrifice it for me. Davis's jaw tightened. My father didn't sacrifice himself for a black family because he thought about his future. He did it because it was right. You think I can do less? Before Solomon could respond, Chen burst back into the room. I found her. Geneva Patterson. Lives in a nursing home on the south side. St. Catherine's Home for Seniors. She's 73, widowed, no children. According to her medical records, she had a stroke 2 years ago but recovered most function. Can she talk? Patricia asked. Physically, yes. Whether she will, that's another question. Then we need to ask. Patricia grabbed her coat. Solomon, you're coming with me. Chen, pull her complete medical file. I want to know what we're walking into. Davis, you stay here where it's safe. Not a chance. Patricia turned on him. Officer Davis, you are a material witness in a federal investigation. If something happens to you, this case falls apart. You stay. Here. That's not a request. Davis looked like he wanted to argue, but Solomon put a hand on his shoulder. She's right. You're more valuable alive and safe than dead and heroic. Trust me. Davis exhaled hard. Fine. But if anything happens, we'll call. Patricia was already heading for the door. Let's go, Solomon. We've got a witness to find before Rooker figures out where she is. They took Patricia's car driving through South Bend as the sun started to set. The streets were quieter now, but tension hung in the air like humidity before a storm. They passed 3 police cruisers in 4 blocks. Each one slowed down as they passed officers inside staring. They know, Solomon said. Of course they know. Rooker's probably already put the word out. Federal prosecutor and disgraced judge going after one of their own. We're targets now. You should have let me do this alone. Not a chance. Patricia's hands were tight on the wheel. You know what my father told me when I joined the DOJ. He said the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. Well, I'm doing something, and I don't care who it pisses off. They pulled into the parking lot of St. Catherine's Home for Seniors. The building was old, but well-maintained, surrounded by trees that were starting to lose their leaves. A few elderly residents sat on a porch watching the sunset. Inside, the nurse at the front desk looked up as they entered. Her name tag read Maria. Can I help you? Patricia showed her badge. We're here to see Geneva Patterson. It's official business. Maria's expression shifted. Mrs. Patterson doesn't get many visitors. Is she in trouble? No, she's a witness in a federal investigation. We just need to ask her a few questions. About what? About something she saw 3 years ago. Something important. Maria studied them both clearly, trying to decide if they were trustworthy. Finally she said, Room 217. But be gentle with her. She's been through a lot. The stroke left her weak and her memory isn't what it used to be. We'll be careful, Solomon said. They walked down a long corridor that smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. Room 217 was at the end door, slightly ajar. Patricia knocked softly. Mrs. Patterson, my name is Patricia Marshall. I'm with the U.S. Attorney's Office. May we come in? No response. Patricia pushed the door open slowly. Inside, an elderly black woman sat in a wheelchair by the window, looking out at the darkening sky. She was small, frail, her hair completely white. But her eyes, when she turned to look at them, were sharp and clear. I wondered when someone would come, she said. Her voice was thin but steady. Took you long enough. Solomon stepped forward. Mrs. Patterson, my name is Solomon Rivers. I know who you are. Saw you on the news. The judge who got arrested. The one asking about Malik. She turned her wheelchair to face them fully. You want to know what I saw that night? Yes, ma'am. And you think I'm going to tell you after 3 years of keeping my mouth shut? Patricia pulled up a chair. Mrs. Patterson, we understand you're afraid. But? Afraid. Geneva laughed, but it was bitter. Child, I'm 73 years old. I've got high blood pressure, diabetes, and a heart that could quit any minute. Fear stopped mattering to me a long time ago. I kept quiet because nobody wanted to hear the truth. Not the police, not the prosecutors, not the mayor. They all wanted me to say what fit their story. When I wouldn't, they made me disappear. Solomon knelt down beside her wheelchair so they were eye level. I'm listening now. And I want the truth. Whatever it is. Whatever it costs. Geneva studied his face for a long moment. You mean that? I do. She nodded slowly. All right then. But you better write this down because I'm only saying it once. Patricia pulled out a recorder. May I? Go ahead. Patricia hit record. This is Patricia Marshall, Assistant U.S. Attorney, interviewing Mrs. Geneva Patterson regarding the death of Malik Terrence on June 14, 2022. Mrs. Patterson, please state your full name and address. Geneva Louise Patterson, 1847 Maple Street, South Bend, Indiana. At least that's where I used to live before the stroke put me in here. And on the night of June 14th, 2022, you were living at that address. I was. Can you tell us what you saw that night? Geneva took a deep breath. I couldn't sleep. My arthritis was acting up, so I was sitting in my living room chair looking out the window. Around 11 p.m., I saw a car get pulled over right in front of my house. Police lights, the whole thing. 2 officers got out. One went to the driver's side, one to the passenger side. The driver was a black woman, looked terrified. In the back seat was a boy. Couldn't have been more than 12 or 13. That was Malik Terrence, Solomon said quietly. I know his name now. Didn't then. Just saw a scared kid in the back of a car. Geneva's hands trembled slightly. The officer at the driver's window was talking to the woman. The other officer, big guy, mean-looking, walked around to the passenger side where the boy was sitting. He tapped on the window with his flashlight, hard, like he was trying to scare them. The boy rolled down the window. The officer said something. I couldn't hear what. Then the boy held up his phone, like he was showing it to the officer, proving he wasn't hiding anything. What happened next? Geneva's voice got quieter. The officer pulled his gun. Just like that. No warning. The boy didn't move. Didn't reach for anything. He just sat there holding his phone, probably too scared to do anything else. And the officer fired. 3 times. Through the window. I heard the mother screaming. Heard the other officer yelling. Heard the boy... Her voice broke. Heard the boy choking, making these sounds like he couldn't breathe. Patricia leaned forward. Mrs. Patterson, you said the boy didn't move, didn't raise his hands or make any threatening gesture. That's right. He sat there like a statue, and that officer shot him anyway. Did you tell the police this? I tried. That same night, after the ambulance left and the crime scene people were taking pictures, I went outside, told one of the officers what I saw. He wrote it down, asked me to sign it. I did. Thought that was the end of it. Thought justice would happen. But it didn't, Solomon said. No. 2 days later, a different officer came to my house. Big guy. Same one who'd been talking to the driver that night. He said there'd been some confusion about my statement. Asked me to clarify a few things. I told him the same thing I told the first officer. He said I must have been mistaken. Said from where I was sitting I couldn't have seen clearly. Said the investigation showed the boy had made threatening movements. I told him that was a lie. He said it would be better for everyone if I reconsidered my statement. Did he threaten you? Patricia asked. Didn't have to. The way he looked at me, the way he stood in my doorway blocking the light, I knew what he was saying. I knew if I kept talking something bad would happen. So I stopped talking. Told him maybe I was wrong, maybe I didn't see as clearly as I thought. He smiled, said he knew I'd understand. Then he left. Mrs. Patterson, what was that officer's name? Geneva looked directly at Solomon. Dwight Rooker, same man who arrested you this morning. I recognized him on the news. The room went silent. Patricia stopped the recorder. Mrs. Patterson, you just gave us testimony that directly contradicts the official investigation. You understand what that means? It means I'm calling a police officer a liar and possibly a murderer. Yeah, I understand. It also means you'll have to testify in court, under oath, with Rooker's lawyers trying to destroy your credibility. They'll bring up your stroke, your age, your memory issues. They'll try to make you look confused or senile. Geneva's laugh was sharp. Let them try. I've lived 73 years in this country as a black woman. I've been called every name there is, treated like I'm invisible or dangerous depending on the day. I've survived worse than some lawyers in suits. Besides, what are they going to do? Kill me. I'm already dying. Heart disease, diabetes. Old age. Something's going to get me soon anyway. Might as well go out telling the truth. Solomon reached out and took her hand gently. Mrs. Patterson, you're incredibly brave. I'm not brave. I'm just tired of being quiet while children die. She squeezed his hand. You want to know the worst part? After Malik, I kept watching. Kept seeing police stops in front of my house. Kept seeing officers pulling people over, searching cars, putting people in handcuffs. And every time I saw a black or brown face getting roughed up by a cop who looked like he enjoyed it, I thought about Malik, about how I stayed quiet, about how my silence might have let it happen again. "It's not your fault," Patricia said firmly. "You were threatened, intimidated. That's on Rooker and the system that protected him, not you. Maybe, but I still have to live with it. Or I did until now." Geneva looked between them. "So what happens next? You take my statement and bury it like they did the first time." "No, ma'am," Solomon said. "We put you on the stand. We let the world hear what you saw. And we make sure Malik Terrence's real story gets told. The true one, not the version Rooker wrote." When Patricia checked her phone. "We're filing charges within 48 hours. The hearing will be scheduled within a week. Can you be ready?" "I've been ready for 3 years. Just been waiting for someone to ask." They spent another 30 minutes getting details, times, dates, exact wording of conversations. When they finally left, night had fallen completely. In the parking lot, Patricia leaned against her car and exhaled hard. "We've got her. We actually have a credible witness who can destroy Rooker's version of events. We have a 73-year-old woman with a history of stroke who's going to face the best defense lawyers the police union can buy," Solomon corrected. "They'll rip her apart. Not if we prepare her properly. Not if we corroborate her testimony with evidence." "What evidence? Rooker buried everything." Patricia smiled. "He buried the paperwork. He couldn't bury physics. Bullet trajectories don't lie. Blood spatter patterns don't lie. If Malik was sitting still when he was shot, the forensic evidence will show it. We just need to get those files. They'll be sealed. Not from a federal prosecutor with a warrant. Come on, we need to get back." They climbed into the car. As Patricia started the engine, Solomon's phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered. "Judge Rivers." The voice was female, young, scared. Speaking. "My name is Tamara Lewis. You don't know me, but I know you. I saw your press conference. I need to talk to you about Officer Rooker." Solomon put it on speaker. "I'm listening. Assistant U.S. Attorney Patricia Marshall is here as well." "Okay. Good. I need this to be official. I need someone to hear me this time." She took a shaky breath. 2 years ago, Officer Rooker arrested my brother. Said he was selling drugs. He wasn't. My brother was walking home from work. Rooker stopped him, searched him without cause. And when he didn't find anything, he planted a bag of cocaine in my brother's pocket. I saw it happen. I was across the street. I testified at the trial that the drugs were planted. Nobody believed me. My brother got 5 years. Patricia was already typing notes. "Ms. Lewis, where is your brother now?" "Still in prison, Indiana State. He's got 3 more years unless—" Her voice broke. "Unless someone believes me. Unless someone finally admits that Rooker's been doing this for years." "How many others?" Solomon asked. "How many people has Rooker arrested on false charges?" "I don't know, but there's a group of us. Families who've been trying to get someone to listen. We've been meeting, comparing notes, building cases. Nobody wanted to hear it. But after your press conference, after you called Rooker out publicly, we thought maybe now someone would care." "How many families?" 17. 17 cases where Rooker was the arresting officer and the charges seemed wrong. Some were dropped. Some got convictions. All of them felt wrong. Patricia and Solomon exchanged looks. "Ms. Lewis." Patricia said, "I need you to send me everything you have. Names, dates, case numbers, statements. Everything. Can you do that?" "Yes, but you have to understand we're scared. Some of the families have been threatened. One man who tried to file a complaint against Rooker had his house broken into the next week. Nothing stolen, just a message. We know Rooker has friends. We know the system protects him." "The system protected him," Solomon corrected. Past tense. As of today, he's under federal investigation. And as of tomorrow, Those 17 families are going to be part of the biggest police corruption case this state has seen. Send us everything. We'll protect you. You promise? I promise. The line went dead. Patricia was already calling Chen. I need protection details on 17 families. Get me names from... She looked at Solomon. Tamara Lewis. She's sending a list. He forwarded the contact information. Chen, these people are witnesses in a federal case. They're also potential targets. Get FBI agents on them immediately. Through the phone, Chen's voice was stressed. Sir, I don't have authorization for that many protective details. The budget. Damn the budget, Patricia snapped. These people's lives are at risk because they're standing up to a corrupt cop. If we can't protect them, we don't deserve their testimony. Make it happen. Yes, ma'am. They were halfway back to the federal building when Solomon's phone rang again. Different number. He answered, heavy breathing on the other end. Then, Judge Rivers. Speaking. They're coming for you, tonight. Rooker called in favors. There's talk of accidents. You need to... The line went dead. Solomon stared at the phone. Someone just warned me that Rooker's planning something. Who was it? Don't know, they hung up. Patricia's hands tightened on the wheel. We need to get you somewhere safe. The federal building has secure floors. You can stay there tonight. What about Davis? He's already there. He'll be fine. And Geneva Patterson and Tamara Lewis and the 17 families, you can't protect everyone. Watch me. Patricia's voice was steel. Rooker wants to play games fine. We'll play. But he's not going to intimidate witnesses. Not on my watch. They pulled into the federal building garage. Patricia parked, and they took the elevator to the 7th floor. Davis met them in the hallway, looking stressed. You need to see this. He held up his phone. On the screen was a news report. The headline read, Federal Judge's Criminal Past Revealed. Solomon grabbed the phone and read. The article claimed he'd been under investigation for ethical violations, had taken bribes from defense attorneys, had falsified court documents. All lies. All designed to destroy his credibility. Where did this come from? Patricia demanded. Anonymous source. Posted on 3 different news sites in the last hour. It's spreading fast. Rooker's fighting back, Solomon said quietly. He's trying to destroy me before I can destroy him. Then we fight back harder. Patricia pulled out her phone and started dialing. I'm calling every news outlet I know. We're doing interviews. All of them. Tonight. We tell your story before they finish writing theirs. Patricia, look at me. Solomon's voice was calm. They're not going to stop. They're going to keep lying, keep twisting, keep making me out to be the villain. That's what they do. That's what they've always done. So, what do you want to do? Give up. No, I want to focus on what matters. Geneva Patterson, Tamara Lewis, the 17 families, Malik Terrence. Those are real. Those are truth. My reputation, that's already gone. Let them have it. But don't let them take those families down with me. Davis spoke up. He's right. The more we defend Solomon, the more attention we draw to the smear campaign. But if we focus on the evidence, on the witnesses, on the pattern of abuse, that's harder to discredit. Patricia looked between them. You're both saying we should let them destroy Solomon's reputation without fighting back. I'm saying my reputation is already destroyed, Solomon said. Has been for 8 months. What we need to protect is the case, the evidence, the truth. That matters more than me. She studied his face for a long moment. Then she nodded. All right, we do it your way. But Solomon, when this is over, when Rooker's in prison and justice is served, we're clearing your name. Every lie they told, every false accusation, we're setting the record straight. If we get that far, we will. Because we're not fighting alone anymore. She gestured to Davis, then to Chen, who'd just entered with a stack of files. We've got good people, truth, and a whole lot of anger. That's enough. Chen dropped the files on the table. Forensic reports from the Malik Terrence scene. Took some digging, but I found them buried in the archive system. Nobody deleted them. They just hid them really well. Patricia grabbed the top file and started reading. Her eyes went wide. Oh my God! What? Solomon moved closer. The bullet trajectories, the angle of entry, the blood spatter patterns. She looked up, her face pale. Malik was sitting completely still when he was shot. Not reaching, not lunging, sitting. The forensics prove it. And Rooker signed off on a report saying the opposite. Davis leaned over her shoulder. That's perjury. Falsifying evidence in a homicide investigation. That's 20 years minimum. That's a career-ending, life-destroying federal prison guaranteeing lie, Patricia corrected. She was smiling now, fierce and sharp. We've got him. Geneva's testimony plus the forensic evidence plus the pattern of abuse from 17 families. We've got enough to not just fire Rooker. We've got enough to destroy him. Solomon felt something he hadn't felt in 8 months. Hope. Real hope. The kind that burns in your chest and makes you believe the world might actually change. How long until we can file charges? Patricia checked her watch. 36 hours. We need to organize the evidence prep, the witnesses, build the timeline. But we can do it. We will do it. And Hartwell? Let him try to stop us. At this point, I'll charge him as an accessory if he gets in the way. She started organizing files. Chen, get me a full workup on every case Rooker touched. Davis, you know cops who might talk off the record. We need corroboration. People who saw Rooker plant evidence, falsify reports, intimidate witnesses. Solomon, you're working with me. We're building the narrative. The story we're going to tell a grand jury that's so clear, so compelling, they'll have no choice but to indict. They worked through the night. Files spread across 3 tables, coffee cups multiplying, phones ringing constantly as more witnesses called in, more families coming forward, more stories of Rooker's abuse. By 3 a.m., they had 23 cases. By 5 a.m., 31. By the time the sun rose, they had 47 documented instances of Dwight Rooker either planting evidence, falsifying reports, or intimidating witnesses. 47 lives destroyed by one cop's ego and the system that protected him. Solomon stood at the window watching the city wake up. Somewhere out there, Rooker was probably sleeping, probably comfortable, probably confident that the system would save him like it always had. He was wrong. Patricia joined Solomon at the window. We're ready. Tomorrow we file. Day after that we present to the grand jury. Within a week, Rooker will be under indictment. Within a month, he'll be in federal custody. And if he runs, then we hunt him down. But he won't run. He's too arrogant. He thinks he's untouchable. She paused. He thought wrong. Davis approached holding his phone. Solomon, there's someone here to see you. Says her name is Nicole Terrence. Says she's Malik's mother. Solomon turned slowly. She's here now. Downstairs. Says she saw the news. Says she needs to talk to you. Send her up. 5 minutes later, the elevator doors opened and a woman stepped out. She was in her 40s, thin with eyes that had seen too much grief. She wore a simple dress and carried a purse clutched tight to her chest. Solomon walked toward her. Mrs. Terrence. She nodded. Then her face crumpled and she started crying. You remember him? You remember my boy? I remember him. Nobody else does. They all moved on. Said it was justified. Said he made a mistake. But you said he mattered. You said his death meant something. It did. It does. She grabbed his hands. Thank you. Thank you for not forgetting. Thank you for fighting when everyone else gave up. Solomon's throat was tight. Mrs. Terrence, I need to tell you something. We found a witness, someone who saw what really happened that night, and we found evidence that proves your son never moved, never threatened anyone. He was murdered. And the officer who did it, the officer who covered it up, we're going to make sure he pays for it. Nicole Terrence collapsed against him sobbing. Patricia and Davis stood back, giving them space. When she finally pulled away, her face was streaked with tears, but her eyes were clear. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing. You've suffered enough. We have what we need." "No." Her voice was firm now. "You don't understand. I need to do this. I need to testify. I need to stand in that courtroom and tell them about my son, about who he was, about what they took from me. Not just the facts, the truth. The real truth about what it's like to bury a child because a cop was scared of a black boy with a phone." Patricia stepped forward. "Mrs. Terrence, you don't have to." "I do. My boy didn't get to tell his story, so I'll tell it for him. And when I'm done, everyone in that courtroom will know his name, will remember his face, will understand that he mattered." She looked at Solomon. "You gave me that chance. You gave my son his dignity back. Now let me fight with you." Solomon nodded. "All right, we fight together." Outside, the sun had fully risen. The city was awake. And somewhere in South Bend, Dwight Rooker's phone was probably ringing. Because the truth was coming. And there was nowhere left to hide. The grand jury convened at 9 a.m. sharp. 23 citizens sitting in a windowless room listening to Patricia lay out the case against Dwight Rooker like she was building a cathedral out of evidence and rage. Solomon sat in the witness waiting room with Nicole Terrence, who hadn't stopped shaking since they'd arrived. Her hands twisted a tissue into shreds. "What if they don't believe me?" she whispered. "They'll believe you. What if they say I'm just a grieving mother who wants revenge?" "Then they'd be right. You do want revenge, but you also want justice. There's a difference and they'll see it." Solomon reached over and stilled her hands. "Nicole, when you walk into that room, you tell them about Malik. Not the version the police wrote, not the version the media sold. The real Malik. The boy who loved basketball and hated broccoli. Who got straight A's and wanted to be a veterinarian. Make them see him as a child, not a statistic. Can you do that?" She nodded, wiping her eyes. "I can do that." The door opened. Chen appeared. "Mrs. Terrence, they're ready for you." Nicole stood on shaking legs. Solomon stood with her. "You're not alone in there," he said. "Malik's with you. I'm with you. Everyone who's been hurt by Rooker is with you. Speak for all of us." She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, and walked through the door. Solomon sat back down and waited. Time moved like concrete. 15 minutes. 20. 30. He could hear muffled voices through the walls, but couldn't make out words. Finally, 45 minutes later, Nicole emerged. Her face was wet, but her eyes were clear. "How did it go?" Solomon asked. "I told them everything. About Malik, about that night, about how the police came to my door at 2 a.m. to tell me my son was dead, and then tried to make me believe it was his fault. About how I've spent 3 years being told I should just accept it and move on." She took a shaky breath. "And you know what? They listened. Really listened. Some of them were crying by the end." Solomon pulled her into a hug. "You did good. I did it for Malik, and for every other mother who didn't get to tell her story." Patricia emerged next, looking exhausted but triumphant. "They're deliberating. Should have a decision within the hour." "That fast?" "When the evidence is this overwhelming, it doesn't take long. 47 cases of misconduct. Forensic proof that Rooker falsified the Malik Terrence investigation. Geneva Patterson's testimony. Nicole's testimony. Add it all together, and there's no way they don't indict." She was right. 53 minutes later, the grand jury foreman emerged and handed Patricia a document. She read it, her face giving nothing away. Then she looked up at Solomon and smiled. "We got him. 18 counts including murder falsifying evidence, witness intimidation, deprivation of rights under color of law and conspiracy. Rooker's being arrested within the hour." Nicole Terrence started crying again. This time from relief. Solomon felt something in his chest loosen. Not joy. Not satisfaction. Just the quiet certainty that justice, delayed and messy as it was finally moving in the right direction. "What happens now?" Davis asked. He'd been sitting quietly in the corner watching everything unfold. Now we watch Rooker get arrested. Then we prep for trial. He'll fight this with everything he's got. The union will pay for the best lawyers. They'll try to discredit every witness challenge, every piece of evidence, make this about procedure instead of truth. But we've got the facts. And facts don't lie. Patricia checked her watch. The arrest team is heading to Rooker's house now. Should be there in 10 minutes. I want to be there when they take him, Solomon said. Not a good idea. You're a witness. Your presence could... I don't care about procedure. I care about looking that man in the eye when he realizes he's not untouchable anymore. Solomon's voice was firm. I'm going. Patricia studied him. Fine. But you stay in the car. You don't approach. You don't speak to him. You just watch. Agreed. Agreed. They took 2 cars. Patricia drove Solomon and Davis. Chen followed with Nicole, who insisted on coming despite Patricia's protests. Rooker lived in a suburban neighborhood 20 minutes outside South Bend. Nice houses. Manicured lawns. The kind of place where people believed the world was safe because their streets were quiet and their property values were high. 3 FBI vehicles were already parked outside when they arrived. Agents in tactical gear stood by the front door. Patricia pulled up half a block away and cut the engine. We wait here, she said. Through the windshield, Solomon watched the lead agent knock on Rooker's door. Once. Twice. The door opened and Rooker appeared wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. His hair was messy. He looked like he'd just woken up. The agent said something. Rooker's face went from confusion to rage in under a second. He tried to slam the door, but 2 agents blocked it. Words were exchanged. Rooker was shouting now, gesturing wildly. Then one of the agents pulled out handcuffs. They're arresting him, Davis said quietly. Solomon watched as Rooker was spun around, hands cuffed behind his back, rights being read. The man who'd arrested Solomon just 2 days ago was now experiencing the same humiliation, the same powerlessness, the same crushing weight of the system coming down on someone it had decided was guilty. Rooker's wife appeared in the doorway screaming. Neighbors came out onto porches, phones came out, more cameras recording, more witnesses to the fall of a man who'd thought himself above the law. As they led Rooker to the vehicle, he looked up and down the street. His eyes landed on Patricia's car, on Solomon sitting in the passenger seat. Even from half a block away, Solomon could see the hatred in Rooker's expression. The pure, undiluted rage of a man who'd been caught. Rooker mouthed something. Solomon couldn't hear it, but he could read the lips. This isn't over. Then they shoved him into the back of the FBI vehicle and drove away. Nicole Terrence, watching from Chen's car, whispered, It's really happening. They're really doing it. Yes, ma'am, Chen said. Justice is slow, but it's coming. Back at the federal building, news of Rooker's arrest spread like wildfire. By noon, every major network was covering it. By 1 p.m., the police union had released a statement calling it a witch hunt and a politically motivated attack on law enforcement. By 2 p.m., protests had started outside the police headquarters, some supporting Rooker, some demanding justice for his victims. Solomon watched it all from Patricia's office, feeling disconnected from the chaos he'd helped create. This was bigger than him now, bigger than Rooker. This was about every broken system, every covered-up death, every time the powerful had looked at the powerless and decided their lives didn't matter. Patricia's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then hung up, looking grim. That was Rooker's attorney, Gerald Hoffman. He wants to talk. About what? A deal. Solomon sat up. Already? The man's been arrested for 4 hours, and he's already looking to deal. That's how you know we've got him. If he thought he could win at trial, he'd fight. But he knows the evidence. He knows we've got 47 cases, forensics witnesses. He can't win. So he's going to try to minimize the damage. What kind of deal? Patricia's smile was sharp. Let's find out. An hour later, Gerald Hoffman sat across from Patricia and Solomon in a conference room. He was 50's expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who made 7 figures defending bad cops and worse criminals. "Thank you for seeing me," Hoffman said, all professional courtesy. "I know emotions are running high, but I think we can resolve this in a way that serves everyone's interests." "The only interest I serve is justice," Patricia said. "But I'm listening." "My client is willing to plead guilty to certain charges in exchange for a reduced sentence and the dropping of the murder charge." Solomon laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You want us to drop murder for a cop who shot an unarmed child? My client maintains he acted in accordance with his training and reasonable fear for his safety. The murder charge is excessive and your client shot a 12-year-old boy sitting motionless in a car." Solomon interrupted. "We have forensic evidence. We have an eyewitness. We have his falsified report. He murdered that child and then spent 3 years covering it up. There's no deal that doesn't include murder." Hoffman's jaw tightened. "Judge Rivers, with all due respect, you're not the prosecutor here." "No, but I'm the man whose career your client destroyed. I'm the man he arrested and assaulted on a public street. I'm the man who spent 8 months homeless while your client slept comfortably knowing he'd silenced the one person who could hold him accountable. So when I say there's no deal without murder, you better believe Ms. Marshall is listening." Patricia nodded. "Solomon's right. We're not dropping murder. Your client can plead to all 18 counts and accept whatever sentence the judge sees fit, or we go to trial and let a jury decide. Those are your options." Hoffman leaned back. "You're making a mistake. My client is a decorated officer with 23 years of service. A jury's going to see a good cop who made a difficult decision in a high-pressure situation. They're going to see a federal judge with an axe to grind and a history of ethical violations. Those violations were manufactured to force my resignation," Solomon said quietly. "And you know it. What I know is what I can prove. And what I can prove is that you've been living on the streets for 8 months, that you have a documented grudge against my client, and that your credibility is questionable at best. When I'm done with you on cross-examination, the jury won't know what to believe. Then let them hear from Geneva Patterson. Let them hear from Nicole Terrence. Let them hear from the 47 other families your client destroyed. Let them see the forensic evidence. Let them see the pattern." Solomon leaned forward. "You think you can discredit me, fine. Try. But you can't discredit physics. You can't discredit a mother's testimony. You can't discredit 47 separate incidents of abuse. So go ahead. Take this to trial. Give us the chance to put everything on the record. Because that's what we want. Not a deal. Not a compromise. Truth." Hoffman stood up. "You're going to regret this." "I've regretted a lot of things in my life," Solomon said. "This won't be one of them." After Hoffman left, Patricia let out a long breath. That was risky. We could have gotten him to plead to 15 counts, saved ourselves a trial, guaranteed a conviction. But not the conviction we need. Not the one that says police officers can't murder children and walk away. Not the one that changes the system. Solomon turned to face her. "Patricia, we didn't come this far to settle. We came to win. And if we lose, if a jury buys Hoffman's story and acquits Rooker, then at least we fought. At least we told the truth. At least Malik Terrence's real story got told in open court. That's worth the risk." She studied him for a long moment. "You've changed. 8 months ago, you were cautious, strategic. Now you're willing to bet everything on principle. 8 months ago, I had something to lose. Now I don't. That makes me dangerous." "Good. Because we're going to need dangerous." She pulled out her phone. "Trial prep starts tomorrow. We've got 6 weeks before the court date. We need to prepare every witness, organize every piece of evidence, anticipate every attack Hoffman's going to make. It's going to be brutal. I've lived through brutal. This is just work." Over the next 6 weeks, Solomon lived in the federal building. He slept on a couch in Patricia's office, ate takeout at his desk, spent 18 hours a day going over testimony, reviewing evidence, preparing for trial. Geneva Patterson came in 3 times a week to practice her testimony. At first, she was nervous, stumbling over words, forgetting details. But as the weeks went on, she grew stronger, more confident. By the time trial approached, she could recite what she'd seen that night in perfect detail, never wavering, never doubting. Nicole Terrence worked with a victim's advocate to prepare for the emotional weight of testifying. Solomon sat with her during several sessions, just being present while she worked through the trauma of losing Malik and the anger of being dismissed by the system. The 47 families whose cases formed the pattern of Rooker's abuse were harder to coordinate. Some were scared. Some had moved away. Some didn't want to relive their trauma. But Patricia's team worked tirelessly, and by week 5 they had 23 families willing to testify. Davis spent his time gathering support from inside the police department. It was slow, difficult work. Most officers wouldn't talk, but a few did, quietly, off the record. Enough to confirm what Solomon already knew: Rooker wasn't an outlier. He was just the one who'd gotten caught. The night before the trial began, Solomon stood at the window of Patricia's office, looking out at the city. Behind him, papers covered every surface: evidence, testimony, the accumulated weight of 3 years of lies. Patricia joined him. "You ready?" "As ready as I'll ever be. Hoffman's going to come at you hard. He'll bring up your resignation, your time on the streets, your connection to the Terrence case. He'll try to make you look unstable, biased, unreliable. Let him try. Solomon, I need you to understand something. When you take that stand, everything you say will be public record. Everything you've been through, everything you've survived, it'll all be exposed. There's no privacy, no dignity. They'll pick apart every moment of your life looking for ammunition." "I know. And you're still willing to do it." He turned to face her. "Patricia, I spent 8 months invisible. Nobody saw me. Nobody cared. I could have died on the street, and the world would have moved on without noticing. But now I'm standing in a courtroom telling the truth about a system that chews up children and spits out excuses. Yeah, they'll attack me. Yeah, they'll try to destroy what's left of my reputation. But I'll be seen. I'll be heard. And so will Malik. That's worth anything they can throw at me." She nodded. "Then let's go win this thing." The courthouse was packed when they arrived the next morning. Security had to set up metal detectors outside because so many people wanted to watch. Media trucks lined the street. Protesters on both sides held signs. It felt less like a trial and more like a reckoning. Inside, Judge Margaret Chen presided. She was 60s no-nonsense, with a reputation for running a tight courtroom and tolerating zero theatrics. Solomon had appeared before her twice during his time on the bench. She was fair. That's all he could ask for. Rooker sat at the defense table in a suit looking every bit the professional officer. His face was neutral, but his hands kept clenching and unclenching. Nervous. Good. Hoffman sat beside him, confident and relaxed. He thought he could win this. He was wrong. Judge Chen called the court to order. The state versus Dwight Rooker. 18 counts including murder in the second degree, falsifying evidence, deprivation of rights under color of law, and conspiracy. Ms. Marshall, you may proceed with opening statements. Patricia stood. She walked to the jury box, slowly making eye contact with each juror. "Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about a simple question. Does the badge make someone above the law? The prosecution will prove that Officer Dwight Rooker, over a period of more than a decade, systematically abused his power. He falsified evidence. He intimidated witnesses. He planted drugs on innocent people. And on June 14, 2022, he murdered a 12-year-old child named Malik Terrence, and then spent 3 years covering it up." She let that hang in the air. "You're going to hear from Malik's mother, who will tell you about the son she lost. You're going to hear from an eyewitness who saw the shooting and was threatened into silence. You're going to hear from forensic experts who will prove that the official report was a lie. You're going to hear from 23 families whose lives were destroyed by Officer Rooker's misconduct. And when you've heard all of that, you're going to have to answer that simple question, is anyone above the law? She returned to her seat. Hoffman stood for his opening. The defense doesn't dispute that Malik Terrence's death was a tragedy, but tragedy is not the same as murder. Officer Rooker responded to a traffic stop involving a vehicle that matched the description of one used in a recent robbery. When he approached the vehicle, he observed suspicious movement in the back seat. Following his training, he gave verbal commands. When those commands weren't followed, and when he observed what he reasonably believed to be a weapon, he made a split-second decision to protect himself and others. Was he wrong? Perhaps. But being wrong in a high-pressure situation is not murder. It's human error. And we don't send good officers to prison for being human. He continued for another 10 minutes, painting Rooker as a dedicated public servant who'd made a tragic mistake. When he finished, Judge Chen called for the prosecution's first witness. The prosecution calls Geneva Patterson. Geneva entered slowly, using a walker, but when she sat in the witness chair, her back was straight and her voice was clear. Patricia walked her through the testimony. What she'd seen, what she'd heard, what Rooker had said when he came to her house to change her story. When Hoffman cross-examined, he tried to poke holes. Mrs. Patterson, you testified that you were in your living room chair. How far from the street? About 40 feet. And it was 11 p.m., dark outside. Yes, but there were street lights. I could see clearly. You also testified that you had a stroke 2 years ago. Did that affect your memory? My memory of that night is perfect. I've been living with it for 3 years. But the stroke did cause memory issues, correct? For some things, not for this. How can you be sure? Geneva looked directly at the jury. Because I watched a child die. And that's not something you forget no matter what happens to your brain afterward. Hoffman tried a few more angles, but Geneva didn't budge. When she was dismissed, Solomon could see several jurors wiping their eyes. Next came the forensic experts. They brought diagrams, photos, detailed analysis of the bullet trajectories. They proved beyond any doubt that Malik had been sitting still when he was shot. That there was no threatening movement. That the official report describing a lunge toward the officer was physically impossible based on where the bullets entered the vehicle. Hoffman tried to challenge their methodology, but they were experts for a reason. Every question he asked, they had an answer. Every doubt he tried to plant, they dug up with evidence. By the end of day 2, the prosecution had established that Rooker had lied in his official report. The question now was whether that lie made him a murderer or just a cop covering his own mistakes. Day 3 began with Nicole Terrence taking the stand. She wore the same dress she'd worn to Malik's funeral. Her hands shook as she was sworn in. Patricia's questions were gentle. Mrs. Terrence, can you tell the jury about Malik? He was 12. He loved basketball. He wanted to be a veterinarian because he loved animals more than people. She smiled through tears. He used to rescue stray cats and bring them home. We had 7 cats at one point because Malik couldn't stand the thought of them being alone. He was kind. He was gentle. He was my baby. What happened on June 14, 2022? Nicole's voice broke. We were driving home from his grandmother's house. It was late. A police car pulled us over. I didn't know why. I hadn't been speeding. My registration was current. I just pulled over and waited. Then an officer came to my window, asked for my license. I gave it to him. He asked where we were going. I told him. Then another officer came to the passenger side where Malik was sitting. He tapped on the window with his flashlight. Malik rolled it down. The officer asked what he was doing. Malik said he was just sitting there. The officer asked what was in his hand. Malik held up his phone. And then, she couldn't continue. Sobs racked her body. Judge Chen called for a brief recess. When they resumed, Nicole had composed herself enough to finish. The officer shot him 3 times. I heard Malik choking. I tried to get to him, but the other officer wouldn't let me. I was screaming, begging them to help him. But they just stood there, and Malik died in the back seat while I watched. Hoffman's cross-examination was brutal. He questioned whether Nicole had actually seen the shooting from the driver's seat, questioned whether Malik had said something threatening, questioned whether she'd coached her testimony with the prosecution. But Nicole didn't break. She answered every question the same way. My son was murdered. That's the truth. That's all I know. When she stepped down, the jury looked shaken. The next 2 days were filled with testimony from other families. Stories of planted evidence, false arrests, intimidation, each one building on the last, establishing the pattern of Rooker's abuse. By day 5, the prosecution rested. Hoffman's defense was simple. Rooker was a good cop who'd made a mistake in a high-pressure situation. He called character witnesses other officers who testified to Rooker's dedication. He called use-of-force experts who claimed the shooting could have been justified under certain interpretations of the evidence. He tried to create reasonable doubt. But he didn't call Rooker to testify. And everyone knew why. Because Rooker couldn't take the stand without opening himself up to cross-examination about the 47 cases, about the falsified reports, about the pattern. On day 7, closing arguments began. Patricia stood before the jury one last time. Officer Rooker made a choice. Not in a split second, not under pressure. He made a deliberate choice to shoot an unarmed child, and then he made another deliberate choice to lie about it. And then he made 46 more choices to abuse his power, destroy lives, and protect himself at the expense of justice. The badge doesn't give him the right to do that. The badge makes it worse. Because we trust police officers. We give them power. And when they abuse that power, they don't just hurt individuals. They hurt society. They hurt the very concept of justice. Officer Rooker is guilty. And it's time we stop protecting people like him and start protecting people like Malik Terrence. Hoffman's closing was predictable. Tragedy, pressure, human error, reasonable doubt. Judge Chen sent the jury to deliberate at 3 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Solomon Patricia Davis, Nicole Geneva, and 23 families waited in the courthouse. Hours passed. 5 p.m., 6 p.m., 7 p.m., still deliberating. At 8:30 p.m., the jury sent a note. They had a verdict. Everyone filed back into the courtroom. Solomon's heart was pounding. This was it. 3 years of pain, 8 months of hell, 6 weeks of preparation, all coming down to 12 people and their decision. Judge Chen called for the verdict. The foreman stood. On the count of murder in the second degree, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Nicole Terrence collapsed in her seat, sobbing. Geneva Patterson raised her hands to the sky. Solomon felt tears on his face, but didn't bother wiping them away. The foreman continued. On all remaining 17 counts, we find the defendant guilty. Rooker's face went white. His lawyer put a hand on his shoulder, but Rooker shook it off. Judge Chen banged her gavel for order. Mr. Rooker, you have been found guilty on all counts. Sentencing will take place in 30 days. Until then, you are remanded to federal custody without bail. This court is adjourned. As they led Rooker away in handcuffs, he turned and looked at Solomon one last time. No more hatred, no more rage, just the hollow eyes of a man who'd finally been held accountable. Outside the courthouse, the crowd was celebrating, chanting, crying, hugging strangers. Nicole Terrence found Solomon in the chaos. Thank you. Thank you for believing me, for believing in Malik, for not giving up. I didn't do this alone, Solomon said. We all did this, together. But you started it. You stood up when everyone else had given up. That matters. Patricia appeared grinning wider than Solomon had ever seen. We did it. We actually did it. Yeah, Solomon said. We did. Davis joined them, his face wet with tears. My father would have been proud. Of all of us. They stood together as the sun set, watching a crowd celebrate justice finally served. It wasn't perfect. It wouldn't bring Malik back. It wouldn't erase the trauma of 47 families. It wouldn't fix the system that had protected Rooker for so long. But it was something. It was accountability. It was truth. And sometimes, that's all you can ask for. 30 days felt like 30 years. Solomon spent them fielding interview requests, meeting with families who wanted to share their own stories of police abuse, and watching the fallout spread like ripples from a stone thrown in water. The South Bend Police Department launched an internal review of every case Rooker had touched. Within 2 weeks, 17 convictions were overturned. Within 3, the number climbed to 31. Lives ruined by false arrests were suddenly given second chances. Men released from prison. Records expunged. Families reunited. But not all the stories had happy endings. 3 of the people Rooker had falsely imprisoned had died in custody. 2 had been killed by other inmates. 1 had taken his own life. Their families filed wrongful death suits against the city. More would follow. On the morning of Rooker's sentencing, Solomon woke up on the couch in Patricia's office for what he hoped was the last time. His back ached, his neck was stiff, but his mind was clear. Patricia was already at her desk, going over notes. She looked up when she heard him stirring. "Big day," she said. "Yeah. How do you feel?" "Tired, relieved, angry that it took this long." He sat up, rubbing his face. "What's the prosecution recommending?" "Life without parole on the murder charge. Consecutive sentences on the other counts. Rooker dies in prison. That's what we're asking for." "And what do you think Chen will give him?" Patricia shrugged. "She's fair. She'll consider his age, his years of service, the fact that this is his first conviction. But she'll also consider Malik, the 47 other victims, the systemic abuse. My guess, 30 to 40 years minimum. He'll die inside either way." "Good." She studied him. "You know, some people would call that vengeful. Some people didn't watch their entire life get destroyed while the man responsible slept peacefully every night. I call it justice." Solomon stood and stretched. "What time do we need to be there?" 9. "But Nicole wants to speak with you first. She's downstairs." Solomon found Nicole in the lobby, sitting with her hands folded in her lap. She looked smaller somehow, like the verdict had taken something out of her, along with the anger she'd carried for 3 years. "Morning," Solomon said, sitting beside her. "Morning." She didn't look at him. "I couldn't sleep last night. Kept thinking about what I'm going to say when the judge asks if I want to make a statement." "What are you going to say?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to scream at Rooker. Tell him exactly what he took from me. What my life has been like since Malik died. How I can't go into his room without falling apart. How I see his face in every young boy I pass on the street. How I'll never recover from this no matter how long Rooker goes to prison. But another part of me is just tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of reliving that night over and over. Tired of making Malik's death define everything I am." She finally looked at Solomon. "How do I let go without letting him win?" Solomon was quiet for a moment. "You don't let go of Malik. You never will. He's your son. He'll be part of you until the day you die. But you can let go of the anger. Not because Rooker deserves it. He doesn't. But because you deserve peace. And peace doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without it destroying you every time." Nicole's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to do that." "Neither do I. But I'm trying to learn. We can figure it out together." She reached over and squeezed his hand. "You're a good man, Solomon Rivers. Don't let them convince you otherwise." The courtroom was packed again. Every seat filled. Media in the overflow room. Oh, this wasn't just about Rooker anymore. This was about accountability. About whether the system could actually change. Judge Chen took her seat and called the court to order. "We're here for sentencing in the matter of the state versus Dwight Rooker. Mr. Rooker, please stand." Rooker stood. He looked older than he had 30 days ago. Grayer. More tired. Prison didn't suit him. Mr. Rooker, a jury of your peers, has found you guilty on 18 counts, including murder falsifying evidence, witness intimidation, and deprivation of rights under color of law. Before I impose sentence, is there anything you'd like to say? Hoffman whispered something to Rooker, probably telling him to stay quiet. But Rooker shook his head and stepped to the microphone. Your Honor, I served this community for 23 years. I put on the uniform every day knowing I might not come home. I ran toward danger while others ran away. I did my job. I protected people. And yes, sometimes I made mistakes. Sometimes I got it wrong. But I never woke up planning to hurt anyone. I never wanted that kid to die. His voice cracked. I didn't want it to end like this. Judge Chen's face was unreadable. Mr. Rooker, this court has heard 7 days of testimony detailing a pattern of abuse spanning over a decade. 47 documented cases of misconduct. 3 people who died in prison after you falsely imprisoned them. And at the center of it all, a 12-year-old child who you shot and killed and then spent 3 years lying about. Your service doesn't erase that. Your regret doesn't undo it. The badge you wore made your crimes worse, not better, because we trust police officers with power, and you betrayed that trust repeatedly. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. Before I impose sentence, I want to hear from the victims. Ms. Marshall. Patricia stood. Your Honor, the prosecution calls Nicole Terrence. Nicole walked to the front slowly. She didn't have prepared remarks. She just spoke from the heart. My son was 12 years old. He had a phone in his hand. He was sitting in the back seat of my car. He did nothing wrong, and Officer Rooker killed him. Her voice was steady now, stronger than it had been in the lobby. For 3 years, I was told that my son's death was justified, that he'd made threatening movements, that Officer Rooker feared for his life. But we all heard the truth in this courtroom. Malik never moved, never threatened anyone. Officer Rooker shot an unarmed child and then lied about it to protect himself. And I will never get my son back. I will never see him graduate, never see him fall in love, never see him become the man he was meant to be. Officer Rooker took all of that from me. He took my future. He took Malik's future. And no amount of prison time will ever make that right. But at least now people will know the truth. They'll know Malik's name. They'll know he mattered. That's all I can ask for. She returned to her seat. Several jurors from the trial had come back to watch the sentencing. Most were crying. Judge Chen called several other victims to speak. Tamara Lewis talked about her brother still in prison, whose conviction was being appealed. Shanice Williams talked about her son Deshaun. Geneva Patterson talked about the guilt she'd carried for 3 years for staying silent. When they finished, Judge Chen turned back to Rooker. Mr. Rooker, I've presided over this court for 19 years. I've sentenced murderers, rapists, drug dealers, and thieves. But I have never seen a case that disturbed me quite like this one. Not because the crimes themselves were uniquely heinous, though they were, but because you committed them while wearing a badge. You were given power to protect people, and you used it to hurt them. You were given authority to uphold the law, and you perverted it. You were given the public's trust, and you destroyed it. For that, there can be no leniency. She looked down at her notes. On the count of murder in the 2nd degree, I sentence you to 40 years in federal prison. On the 17 additional counts, I sentence you to consecutive terms, totaling an additional 35 years. Total sentence, 75 years without possibility of parole. You will spend the rest of your life in prison, Mr. Rooker. And every day you're there, I want you to think about Malik Terrence, about the life you took, about the lies you told, about the damage you caused. Maybe one day you'll understand the magnitude of what you've done. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Rooker didn't react at first. Then his knees buckled. He grabbed the table for support. Hoffman was saying something, but Rooker wasn't listening. He turned and looked directly at Solomon. For a moment, their eyes met. And in that moment, Solomon saw something he hadn't expected. Not hatred, not rage, just exhaustion. The look of a man who had been running from the truth for so long that he'd forgotten what it felt like to stop. Then the marshals took him away, and he was gone. Outside, the celebration was muted this time. People were satisfied but not joyful. Justice had been served, but it didn't feel like victory. It felt like closure, like the end of a long, painful chapter. Nicole found Solomon on the courthouse steps. What happens now? Now you heal, however long that takes, however that looks, you heal. What about you? Solomon looked out at the crowd, at the reporters, at the families who'd come to witness justice. I don't know yet. Patricia offered me my old position back. Federal judge, full reinstatement with back pay and cleared record. She pulled strings with the DOJ. But you're not taking it. How'd you know? Because I see your face. That's not the face of a man who wants to go back. That's the face of a man who's figured out he needs to go forward. She was right. Solomon had realized it during the trial. He didn't want to go back to the bench, didn't want to sit in judgment anymore. He'd done that. It had cost him everything. Now he wanted something different. I'm going to build something, Solomon said. A training center for police officers, focused on de-escalation, empathy, constitutional rights. The things that could have saved Malik's life if Rooker had bothered to learn them. I want to train the next generation of cops to be better than the last. Nicole smiled. Malik would have liked that. He always believed people could change if someone just taught them how. He was a smart kid. The smartest. She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo. Young boy, bright smile, basketball jersey. That's him. That's my baby. Solomon studied the photo, really looked at it. Not the victim, not the symbol. Just a kid who'd loved basketball and hated broccoli and dreamed of being a veterinarian. Thank you for letting me see him, Solomon said quietly. Davis appeared looking conflicted. Solomon, can we talk? They walked away from the crowd to a quieter spot. Davis had been wrestling with something for days. Solomon could see it in his face. I'm leaving the force, Davis said finally. Turning in my badge next week. Why? Because I can't work in a system that protected Rooker for 23 years. Because every time I put on that uniform now, I think about how many officers like him are still out there. How many reports are being falsified right now? How many people are being hurt while good cops stay quiet because they're scared of retaliation? He looked at Solomon. I became a cop to be like my father, but my father wouldn't want me to stay in a department that's this broken. What are you going to do? I don't know. I've only ever wanted to be a police officer. It's all I know. Solomon was quiet for a moment. Then, how would you feel about teaching? Teaching what? Police recruits. At the center I'm building. Teaching them how to be the kind of cop your father was. The kind who protects people instead of hurting them. The kind who does the right thing even when it's hard. Solomon met his eyes. You stood up when it mattered, Marcus. Not many people do that. The recruits need to learn from someone who actually knows what courage looks like. Davis's eyes went wide. You want me to be an instructor? I want you to help build something better, something your father would be proud of. What do you say? Davis didn't answer right away. He looked out at the courthouse, at the families gathered on the steps, at the remnants of a battle that had been won but left scars on everyone involved. Yeah, he said finally. Yeah, I'll do it. Patricia joined them, looking exhausted but satisfied. So I hear you're turning down my job offer. You heard right, Solomon said, and building some idealistic training center instead. That's the plan. You know it's going to be a nightmare, right? Getting funding, finding a location, dealing with police unions who'll fight you at every step because you're criticizing their training methods. Probably. And you're doing it anyway. I am. She smiled. Then I'm helping. The U.S. Attorney's Office will provide oversight federal funding if I can swing it, and legal support when the unions try to shut you down. Which they will. Patricia, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. Besides, you can't do this alone. You'll need lawyers, funding, experts, political connections. Lucky for you, I've got all three. She pulled out her phone. I'm already drafting the proposal. We'll call it the Malik Terrence Justice Initiative. Has a nice ring to it. Nicole overheard and walked over. You're naming it after Malik. If that's okay with you, Patricia said. He deserves to be remembered, not just as a victim, but as the reason we're making things better. Nicole's eyes filled with tears again, but she was smiling. He'd be honored. We're all honored. The next 6 months moved fast. Patricia secured federal grant money. Solomon found a building on the south side of South Bend, an old community center that had been sitting empty for years. Davis recruited 3 other officers who'd left the force after watching Rooker's trial, all of them eager to be part of something better. They spent weeks designing curriculum, de-escalation techniques, constitutional law, implicit bias training, community engagement, everything that should have been standard but wasn't. The police unions fought them just like Patricia predicted, called it an attack on law enforcement, said it was teaching officers to be weak, but public support was overwhelming. Malik's story had resonated. People wanted change, and for once the people's voices were louder than the unions. The Malik Terrence Justice Initiative opened on a cold morning in November, a small ceremony, nothing fancy. Nicole cut the ribbon with Davis standing beside her. Solomon watched from the side, feeling something he hadn't felt in over a year. Purpose. Geneva Patterson was there, walker and all. She'd become an unexpected advocate speaking at community meetings about the importance of accountability. She was fiercer at 73 than most people half her age. You did good, Solomon, she said, patting his arm. That boy's legacy is going to save lives. That matters. I hope so. I know so. I've lived long enough to know the difference between hope and certainty. This is certainty. The first class of recruits arrived the next morning. 23 officers from departments across Indiana, all voluntarily enrolled, all wanting to be better. Davis stood in front of them, nervous but determined. My name is Marcus Davis. A year ago, I arrested an innocent man because my training officer told me to. I didn't question it, didn't stand up, just followed orders. And it almost destroyed someone's life. This program exists because I finally learned to ask the right question. Is what I'm doing right? Not is it legal? Not is it by the book? Is it right? That's what we're going to teach you here. How to ask that question. How to live with the answer. And how to do the right thing even when everyone's telling you not to. He taught them about his father. About the moment he chose to stand with Solomon instead of Rooker. About the cost and the reward of doing what's right. The recruits listened like their lives depended on it. Maybe they did. Solomon spent his days at the center working with Davis, consulting on curriculum, meeting with families who wanted to share their stories. He slept in an apartment nearby, modest but clean. First real home he'd had in over a year. At night sometimes he'd walk the same streets he'd walked when he was homeless. Not because he missed it, but because he needed to remember. Needed to stay connected to that version of himself who'd hit bottom and found a way to climb back up. One evening, about 8 months after the center opened, he was walking past the cafe where Rooker had arrested him. A little girl, maybe 7 years old, was playing in the small park next door. She was running through fallen leaves when something metallic caught her eye. She bent down and picked it up. Solomon watched as she brushed dirt off the object. It was small, rectangular, looked like it had been there for months. She carried it to her mother, who was sitting on a bench. "Mommy, what's this?" The mother took it, and her eyes went wide. It was a badge. Not Solomon's. His was locked away in a safe at Patricia's office. This was different, smaller, maybe a child's toy, maybe something someone lost, but it had words engraved on it that the mother read out loud. Junior police officer, protect and serve. The little girl's eyes lit up. What does that mean? The mother looked at the badge, then at her daughter. It means someone promised to keep people safe, to do the right thing even when it's hard. Like a hero. The mother glanced up and saw Solomon standing there. She recognized him. His face had been all over the news for months. She smiled slightly, understanding the weight of the moment. Like someone who fights for justice, she said to her daughter, even when everyone else gives up. What's justice? The little girl asked. The mother thought for a moment. It's when someone stands up for what's right. When someone says this isn't okay and does something about it. When someone cares enough to make the world better, even if it costs them everything. The little girl studied the badge. I want to do justice. Then you will, baby. You will. Solomon felt his throat tighten. He turned and walked away before they could see the tears on his face. Back at the center, Patricia was waiting with paperwork. We got another grant approved. $50,000 for next year's operations. We can expand to a second class. That's good, Solomon said. She studied his face. You okay? Yeah. Just thinking about everything that happened. Everything it took to get here. You mean the arrest, the trial? All of it. The 8 months before that. The career I lost. The life I thought I'd have that disappeared. He sat down, suddenly tired. Sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. If one training center and one conviction is enough to justify everything I went through. Patricia sat beside him. Solomon, in the 8 months since we opened, we've trained almost 200 officers. Those officers went back to their departments and they're teaching others, changing policies, standing up to corruption. We've already prevented at least 3 situations that could have ended like Malik's death. 3 families who didn't have to bury children because someone remembered what they learned here. Is that worth it? Solomon thought about the little girl with the badge, about Nicole Terrence, who'd found a way to honor her son's memory, about Davis, who'd turned his mistake into a mission, about Geneva Patterson, who'd spent her last years fighting for truth instead of hiding from it. Yeah, he said finally. It's worth it. Davis poked his head in. Solomon, there's someone here to see you. Says it's important. Solomon walked to the lobby and stopped. Standing there looking nervous was a young man in a police uniform. 23, maybe 24. Black, clean cut, badge shining. Judge Rivers, my name is Officer James Terrence. I'm Malik's cousin. I just graduated from the academy, and I wanted to meet the man who made sure my cousin's death meant something. Solomon shook his hand, speechless. I enrolled because of you, James continued. Because of what you did, what you built. I want to be the kind of officer Malik would have been proud of. The kind who protects instead of hurts. I wanted you to know that you didn't just get justice for one family. You inspired a whole generation of us to do better. Solomon's voice was rough. Your cousin would be proud of you. I hope so. I'm trying. James paused. There's a bunch of us. Recruits who enrolled because of the Malik Terrence Justice Initiative. We all want to be part of the change. We all want to make sure what happened to Malik never happens again. After James left, Solomon stood in the lobby for a long time. Around him the center buzzed with activity. Officers training, Davis teaching, families sharing stories, lives being changed, systems being challenged. This wasn't the life Solomon had planned. He'd lost his career, his home, his reputation. He'd spent 8 months on the street. He'd been arrested, humiliated, broken down. But he'd also stood up. He'd told the truth. He'd fought back. And that fight had created something bigger than himself. Something that would outlast him. Something that turned one child's death into a catalyst for change. Nicole Terrence appeared in the doorway carrying a framed photo. It was Malik, the same basketball picture she'd shown Solomon after the verdict. But this time, there was an inscription beneath it, Malik Terrence. His life mattered. His death will save others. I want you to hang this in the main training room, she said. So every officer who comes through here sees his face, remembers his name, understands what they're here to prevent. Solomon took the frame carefully. I'll put it right at the front, first thing they see when they walk in. Good. She looked around the center at everything they'd built. You know I hated you at first, when you issued that ruling 3 years ago, and then resigned 6 months later. I thought you'd given up, thought you'd let them win, thought you'd abandoned us. I did abandon you. For 8 months. No, you were healing, finding your way back. And when you did, you came back stronger. You came back fighting. That's not abandonment. That's survival. She touched his arm gently. Malik's watching. Wherever he is, he knows what you did for him, for all of us. Thank you. She left the photo and walked away. Solomon hung it in the training room right where she'd asked. Front and center. Impossible to miss. That night, lying in his apartment, Solomon thought about the journey. Franklin Avenue to Federal Courthouse to homeless shelter to training center. Rock bottom to resurrection. Death to purpose. He thought about Rooker sitting in a federal prison somewhere 75 years stretching ahead of him. Did he regret it? Did he understand what he'd done? Solomon didn't know. Didn't care anymore. Rooker's story was over. Solomon's was just beginning again. He thought about the badge that had slipped from his pocket that morning on Franklin Avenue. How something so small had changed everything. How one moment of truth had cascaded into justice. He thought about the little girl in the park asking what justice meant. He hoped someday she'd understand. Hoped she'd grow up in a world where the answer was simpler. Where badges meant protection, not fear. Where black children could sit in cars without wondering if they'd make it home. That world didn't exist yet. But maybe with enough work, enough time, enough people like Davis and James and Nicole and Geneva fighting for it, maybe someday it would. Solomon closed his eyes and for the first time in 3 years slept without nightmares. Morning came. New recruits arrived. Davis taught. Patricia negotiated. Families healed. And in a small training center on the south side of South Bend, Indiana, justice wasn't just an idea anymore. It was work. Daily, difficult, necessary work. Work that Solomon Rivers would spend the rest of his life doing. Not because it was easy. Not because it was enough, but because someone had to pick up that badge and keep carrying it forward. And he'd learned the hard way that sometimes the people who've fallen the farthest are the only ones strong enough to lift others up. The badge had fallen once, but it had been picked up again, and it would keep being picked up by new hands in new generations for as long as injustice existed. That was the promise. That was the legacy. That was justice. Not perfect, not complete, but real. And real was enough.